Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me with you today. My name's Andy McAfee. I'm a scientist at MIT, and I want to talk to you today about a very important, very surprising change that's happening all around us right now. And it's a change in the way that we divide up all the work that needs to get done between these amazing digital machines called computers that we have and us human beings. It's about the smart division of labor between minds and machines. And the reason we need to talk about it today is that the smart division of labor is changing really quickly in ways that relatively few of us were anticipating, and in ways that are going to have a big impact on the economy, on industries, on competition, on our standard of living going forward. And to describe that change, I want to start by talking about the way that we've traditionally thought about that division of labor between minds and machines. We've had digital computers for about 60 years. We've been in the PC era for about 40 years. The web has been with us for 25 years or more. So we've got a lot of experience working side by side with machines to get all of our work done. And we came up with a really intelligent, rule of thumb for this division of labor, for dividing up work between us humans and all of our amazing digital machines. And that rule was essentially, if you could write down exactly what needed to happen, if you could write down exactly the steps that you needed to follow, or the way that you were going to decide between A and B, if you could write all that down exactly, give it to the computers, because they're better at following step-by-step instructions than we are. They're really good at arithmetic. They're really good at all kinds of math. They're really good at following a process through step by step. Great. Give all that routine work, all that work that we can codify. And in fact, the reason we call computers coders is that they have traditionally codified our human knowledge. Great. Give all of that to the machines. The old theory went, that would free us up, that would free us humans up to do the things that we did better. And in particular, there was one really important area of thinking, decision making, deciding, predicting, doing these fundamentally important things that really did appear to be unique to us. And to describe what that style of thinking is, that we always thought was unique to us, I want to talk about playing games. Because as soon as we developed computers, some of the smartest people in the world started programming them to try to be good at the games that we human beings had invented to play with ourselves. So I'm pretty sure that on the very first day that we had digital computers, someone programmed it to play tic-tac-toe and never lose. The rules for playing tic-tac-toe and not losing are extremely simple. Codify those. Humans will never beat a properly programmed tic-tac-toe computer anymore. Checkers has also been programmed that way. No human being will ever beat a properly programmed checkers computer again, because we finally figured out the rules for playing checkers and never ever losing. There's a chance that a very, very good human chess player could still beat the top chess computer, but that chance is getting smaller every day. And the reason it's getting smaller is that we kind of know what constitutes a smart move in the game of chess. We kind of know how to evaluate move A versus B versus C versus D. We have these pretty good, again, rules, or at least rules of thumb, heuristics, for deciding what to do in a chess game. And once you program those into a computer, and once that computer gets powerful enough and fast enough and can evaluate enough of these different decisions, then the human advantage in chess turns into a disadvantage in chess. And the gap between top human players and top digital players is actually very, very big these days. Again, it's not impossible that a top human could beat a top chess playing computer, but it becomes less likely over time as our computers get more powerful and as we understand how to program chess a little bit better. That gap between the top human player and the top digital player is now so big that they asked a human chess grandmaster a little while back how he'd prepare for a match against a computer. And he said, I'd bring a hammer. So in all those kinds of games, the torch has been passed from human superiority to digital superiority. But there is another game that points to this ability that we humans have that we did not think we could automate, that we did not think we could digitize. And that game is Go. It's an ancient game. It's about 3,000 years old. It was invented in East Asia. It's played more in Asia than in Europe and North America. And many people think it's the most beautiful, pure strategy game that we human beings have ever invented. Played on a 19 by 19 grid, and the players take turns placing stones on the grid. You try to capture territory, remove your player's stones from it. It's a really beautiful game. Here's what's really interesting about Go. Nobody knows how to play Go at a high level such that they can explain it to a computer or a computer programmer. Now, I hope it just sounds like I said something ridiculous. There are people playing Go at a very high level. The old thinking was, go ask them how they decide to make their moves. What rules are they following? What steps are they following to decide where to place their stone? Great, understand those rules, program them into a computer, and off we go. Here's the problem with that approach. When you go sit down, if you bring a team of programmers and sit down with a top human Go player and ask them to walk you through one of their recent games, if you say, okay, why did you make that move right there? What you will very often hear back is, I'm sorry, I don't know. I can't explain it to you. I don't have access to that knowledge that I clearly possess because I'm a very good Go player. I just can't explain it to you or anybody else. My brain is good at this particular task. I've studied for a long time. My pattern matching abilities are very, very good. And when I look at a Go board, the right move just occurs to me. The reason we know it's the right move is I win a lot of Go games. That's how we know I'm good, but I can't explain my own ability to you. I can't give you my knowledge because I don't have access to my knowledge. There's a really nice saying. It says, we human beings, we know more than we can tell. And it turns out all of us are like that. Everybody participating today, for example, is an expert recognizer of human faces. We're all very, very good at it. Nobody has been able to program a computer in the standard way to recognize human faces, to figure out, I look at the eyes first, and then I look at the shape of the nose. Whenever we try to program those rules in, we get a terrible facial recognition system. So this looked like a really good way to think about dividing the work up between minds and machines. In these cases, and again, I want to stress, there are a lot of these cases. Grammar, translating human speech, recognizing human speech, image recognition, playing games like Go. In all of these areas, we human beings know more than we can tell. We can't access our own knowledge and convey it in a way that would let somebody write down all the rules. Great. This provides a really convenient way to think about dividing up all the work. Again, give the computers the routine stuff. Give them the stuff where we know the rules and can write them down. And in all these other domains, and domains that require judgment, insight, creativity, free thinking, it felt like those needed to remain with human beings. And so we walked around with that as the division of labor, and it worked very, very well for a long time until the spring of 2016. And what happened in the spring of 2016 was one of the absolute top human Go players, South Korean guy named Lee Sedol, sat down and played a 5-game match against a machine learning system called AlphaGo, developed by Google DeepMind, a team based out of London. And when Google DeepMind announced the match, everybody thought it was either a joke or a really bad idea on DeepMind's part, because it was not even going to be close. All of our previous attempts to build a Go playing piece of software were miserable. They could beat an amateur player, maybe. They could not beat the top amateur players. The best Go software was absolutely no match for any professional Go player out there. It was not even close. Again, because we human beings know more than we can tell about things like playing Go. So when this match was announced, Sedal accepted it, but in a very humble way, he said, I don't expect this to be much of a match based on everything we know so far. he went and played against AlphaGo in the spring of 2016. And the result really shocked the world because AlphaGo won 4 out of the 5 games, won them very handily. And at that point, the world realized that this field that we talk about all the time now, this field of artificial intelligence or machine learning, this field is making amazingly fast progress in areas that we did not think were going to see a lot of progress. And then by extension, there are probably a lot of areas out there in the economy, in the business world, that are a lot like Go in that they're going to be changed by this new wave of software, this new approach to accomplishing tasks with software called artificial intelligence or machine learning. What's really interesting, I had the chance to talk to the DeepMind team about the AlphaGo experience. What is really interesting is not so much that AlphaGo won, it's how AlphaGo won. Because what they explained to me is that AlphaGo doesn't just play like a human being, but better. It plays differently. And it plays differently because the way it was trained was on a combination of human-played games. It studied, essentially, hundreds of thousands of high-level Go games, but then it played Go against itself. It would play endless games and learn on its own how to refine its strategies. Again, it was not taught by human programmers. Human programmers created an environment where the computer could learn on its own, and it learned very well, and it learned to play the game differently than human players have been playing it for 3,000 years. After the tournament between Sadal and AlphaGo continued to improve, and a little while later, AlphaGo invited a team of top Chinese players to play against this piece of software. Sadal won 1 game. The entire Chinese team combined won 0 games. AlphaGo continues to improve. There were some draws, but there were no losses by AlphaGo. And the really wonderful coda to this story is after one of the top Chinese players got done playing against AlphaGo. And again, this guy was a superstar in the world of Go. A child prodigy, had devoted his life to learning and mastering this game. 3,000 years old, invented by human beings. After he was done playing against AlphaGo, he went to Weibo, which is essentially the Chinese equivalent of Twitter. And he said, "I don't think a single human being has touched the edge of truth in the game of Go." Now, I find this fascinating because what he's essentially saying is after 3 millennia of study and practice, we human beings got up to this level. And maybe we thought this was playing Go, 95% as well as the game could possibly be played. What he's saying instead is there's so much more headroom. There's so much more opportunity to do these things better, to play Go better. And then I believe by extension, to do a lot of other very important things better. I want to talk about one more game. After I talk about Go, what I very often hear back is, okay, but Go is a game that a game theorist would call a perfect information game. In other words, both players know everything they need to know about the game all the time. There's no hidden information. Poker, as all of us poker players know, is very, very different because there is hidden information. Nobody else knows what cards I hold. That turns out to be incredibly important because then we can activate another one of our human strengths, which quite frankly is deception. Or if you want to use a little bit less polite term, lying, bluffing in the game of poker, being strategic, representing something different than reality. Again, we humans are really good at that. We've been doing it for a long time. And there's an entire category of games like poker where the hidden information is important. And then we can engage in all these very elaborate, well-developed kinds of deception that we human beings have. And I don't mean deception in a negative way. I mean strategic behavior, bluffing, that kind of behavior. Okay, so poker also was really difficult to program into a computer because we humans not only could play this complex game well, we could bluff. We could engage in all this strategic behavior. It turns out that the top 4 human poker players, especially of the variety called No Limit Heads Up Texas Hold'em, went up against a computer programmed by a team out of Carnegie Mellon just a few years ago, and all four of those human players lost. And what's amazing here, again, is that the Carnegie Mellon team did not try to understand poker very well themselves and then program the smart rules into a computer. They just built a computer that could play games of poker against itself, learn the smart strategies after, I believe, trillions of hands of poker, learn the smart strategies for not only playing your cards, but also representing something different than reality, bluffing, being deceptive, being strategic, all these very, very human skills. After the match, one of the human players said something, again, that I find fascinating and kind of indicative about what's ahead of us and what we're in the middle of right now. He said, look, I am not accusing this piece of software of cheating. That's not what I'm doing. But he said it felt like it could see my cards. And as every poker player knows, if your opponent can see your cards or plays as well as if they are looking at your cards, you really stand no chance in the game. So in games like Go and in games like poker, what we are seeing now is this revolution, this huge progress in getting computers to be good at these kinds of things, where they were terrible before, and where we have walked away from the old approach of let's understand the rules, program the rules, and then get good performance. What we're saying now is we programmers, we coders, we don't need to understand the right strategies. As long as we tell the computer what the task is and set up the environment so that it can learn how to do that task well, that's actually going to be good enough. And we're seeing this approach very quickly spread outside the world of games. This is the reason that your voice dictation and transcription works so well on your smartphone right now. We have very high quality automatic translations and transcriptions, natural language processing, image recognition. In many cases, medical diagnosis is better done by computers than it is even by experienced doctors these days. So we're very quickly seeing this capability escape the lab, escape the university, escape the demonstration, and go out there into the real world of industry. I want to tell one more story about this transition that we're going through in dividing up all the work between people and computers, and it is a story from industry. I talked to a startup a little while back called Zymergen, which wants to accelerate the pace of science for industrial purposes. And to make that concrete, we all benefit from products that are the result of fermentation. And whenever I think of products in fermentation, I think of beer and wine and cheese. But it turns out a lot of industrial products actually are products of fermentation as well. Detergents, for example, have some fermentation products in them. And fermentation happens by living things, yeast, bacteria, different microbes that do the fermentation for us. Now, like you can imagine, we want those microbes to be even better, to be more efficient, or to be more tailored about the way they do fermentation. So we try to alter their genome so that they are better at this job of fermentation. And historically, the way that we've altered their genome is via kind of old-fashioned bench science. We understand the DNA molecule. We understand some things about how that DNA molecule turns into a living thing. We want to make tweaks to that molecule that will turn into different living things that accomplish our goals better. And so we plow away at this thing called science that we human beings invented, that we are good at. We understand some things about the process of life and the process of turning a DNA molecule into a living thing. And when we want to get better at that process, we do science. That's great. The problem is that science is very often slow because of the insane complexity of the challenge, the problem that we're working on. And that challenge of turning a DNA molecule into a living thing is unbelievably complicated. It's one of the most complicated things, I believe, that we have ever come across. And it reminds me of a great quote from a British biologist of the 20th century who just nailed it. He said, look, it's not that nature is more complicated than you imagine. Nature is more complicated than you can imagine. We come up with these against these insanely complicated things out there in the world. And our brains chip away at the complexity via knowledge accumulation and via science, and we make progress on it. But that progress is very often kind of slow. And we want to make faster progress. So this company, Zymergen, is in the business of helping companies that do bioscience make faster progress. And what they essentially say is, look, give us all your previous data. If you're interested in making this microbe better at fermentation, give us all the previous things that you've tried, all the tweaks and all the results, and we're going to do a whole lot of machine learning on this. And the output of our work is going to be a set of suggested tweaks to the microbe, to the DNA of the microbe, that might make it better at fermentation. So they did this. They worked in partnership with an industrial company. They went through a process and they came up with 15 suggested tweaks to the genome of this microbe that would make it better at fermentation. 15 of these things actually worked, which was a huge number. What's really interesting to me is they took those 15 suggested tweaks, they gave them to the scientists at this industrial company, and they said, do these make sense to you? Do you understand how these tweaks would lead to the outcome that we're interested in? And the scientists essentially said, okay, out of these 15 that turned out to be beneficial, 3 of these were on our path. We were going to try them, sometime down the road because we thought they would be good. There are 3 more where we can tell a story about, yeah, we get it. This was in an area that we were interested in. Maybe we would have tried this someday. I think we're up to 6 now. The scientists said there were 3 over here that we have no story about. We have no idea why these tweaks would lead to better fermentation. We're just at a loss. We're up to 9. The last 6 were on regions of the DNA molecule that are now called, I think, non-coding. We used to call them junk DNA. I don't think that's the term anymore. But these were regions of the DNA molecule that were, as far as we knew, not involved in creating a new microbe out there. This was kind of inert territory on the DNA molecule, except that it's not inert because it led to beneficial changes. So again, we see that if we have this new style of computing and this new approach where we're not trying to program all the rules, we can get some very surprising outcomes, we can make faster progress, and we can make very surprising progress. We can take our human knowledge and open up a whole lot new territory here. When I talk about this, a lot of people think it's frightening in some way because it brings up the question pretty quickly, as these computers get so much more powerful, what are we going to do? What value do we human beings have in the world that seems to be coming into focus very quickly? Most of us make our living off of our labor and our thinking. Is our thinking going to have any value in this world that I'm describing? And the thing that I want to leave you with is some optimism and some confidence that our human abilities are going to continue to be extraordinarily valuable in this world that I'm describing. And I can think of that in at least 3 different broad ways, 3 huge categories of value that we human beings are going to continue to add, even in a world of unbelievably powerful, widespread machine learning and artificial intelligence. The first one is just good old common sense. It's a cliche, but we human beings really do have common sense. We understand how this world around us works. Just about all of our attempts to make computers good at common sense have been miserable failure. And as impressive as machine learning is, it is glorified pattern recognition, glorified inference drawing. That's very, very different than understanding this actual universe that we live in. I don't know that we're going to make very fast progress on that. Probably going to make some progress, but I still think good old human common sense is going to be valuable for a long time. For example, when there was a terrorist attack in downtown Sydney a few years ago, like you can imagine, a lot of people wanted to leave the downtown area. In this day and age, you pull out your phone, you try to get an Uber out of the downtown area. Uber's algorithms saw that demand spiking, growing very, very quickly. And so they did what they were programmed to do. which is raise prices. This is not the right thing to do in the middle of a terrorist event, but the algorithms didn't know any better, and Uber had not yet built any circuit breakers that could stop the algorithms from doing that. They learned very quickly. And so when, unfortunately, there was a terrorist attack in Paris not too much later, Uber human beings intervened. They shut off the algorithms and they offered free rides for the evening in Paris. That was the correct, the smart approach. We need human beings involved for that kind of work. Another thing is it's absolutely true that there are still skills that will be very much in demand in this world that we're creating very quickly. So creativity, knowing how to ask the right question, is going to be extraordinarily important. High-level STEM skills are going to be extremely important, and high-level people skills are probably even going to become more important. The ability to motivate, coordinate, persuade, negotiate, bring a team together, bring a team along. I have never seen a piece of technology that's any good at these things. So social skills, creative skills, STEM skills, quantitative skills, all those are going to be extremely valuable. And then I think a large category of jobs, some very good jobs in the world that we are creating very quickly, is a person who is a very good partner with a very sophisticated piece of technology, but partner in a different way than we're doing it right now. Right now, we humans do all the thinking, and the computer takes care of the arithmetic and the busy work and the drawing for us. I think that's going to flip in a lot of cases. And what's going to happen is the computer is going to tee up Eureka's solutions, ideas, and then the person is going to help evaluate those, tweak them, refine them, work in partnership with a piece of technology to come up with something that's actually going to create value, solve a problem, make somebody happy out there in the world. But the partnership is going to be a little bit inverted from what we have right now, where the computer is kind of the assistant to the human being. I'm not saying that we're going to become assistants to computers, but we are going to have to get used to, I believe, a world where the computers are coming up with a lot of the real eurekas, and we are trying to unpack those eurekas, figure out why they work so well, how to make them even better, and how to make them have an impact out there in the real world. I don't find this a scary time at all. I find this a deeply interesting, really exciting time, because I think a lot of new opportunities are going to open up for us to exercise our abilities and our judgment and our creativity and what really makes us human, at the same time that our performance is going to get a lot better and that we're going to put a lot more useful, powerful things out there in the world. So I am looking forward to the Roaring '20s, especially as we come out of this pandemic, and I hope that the next time we can get together, we can do it in person. Thanks very much for having me.